Gentlemen, I would like to respond to the government's proposition that we should subsidize private housing for the citizens of the United States. And first, I'd like to start with a little bit of an introduction to why one might think that that's a good argument. In recent history, we're familiar with the housing crisis that has caused millions of people, if I am correct, to have lost their homes, having lost money. Being driven out of your home is, of course, a terrible thing, as it is, but people, businesses, banks are losing money over the fact that people can't pay for the homes that they're in. Now, you might say that, well, if the government helps to pay for the homes, then naturally the homes will be paid for, we won't have anything to worry about, and we won't have problems with people being unable to pay for their homes. This is wrong. This doesn't make sense. If the government pays for the home isn't really the person's anymore. It doesn't seem really just that the government should own the person's home in that sense. No, what caused this whole crisis was the fact that the government decided to deregulate the housing industry and how loans are made. And in this new environment, it became possible for more exploitative loans to take place. And so, of course, banks don't necessarily think in their own best long-term interest, because frequently when you have a bunch of banks, they'll sell debt from one person to another. And so it becomes very profitable to own someone's loan and sell it to someone else. And you can still make a profit doing this. And this is rather silly, considering that the whole point of it is to loan out money and get money back for your investment by giving them the home, and that they pay you back extra money. So really, by deregulating, the government has completely destroyed this process. And instead of paying for the house themselves, people, by getting rid of this regulation, it costs more money, since it's much cheaper to regulate and keep extremely high interest loans from being cleared for people who simply cannot pay for them in the long run. The next point that I'm going to want to really hammer on is the fact that, as I mentioned briefly before, if the government pays for the house in part, then really the person doesn't own the home. And the fact is, you can see that one of the more important things for people is the ability to rely on themselves, the ability to establish, for example, a track record of credit. I mean, if the government bails you out every time you make a mistake, or every time that you want something, it's not really going to help you at all. In fact, it's going to make you just come back to the government again, because it doesn't teach you how to fend for yourself, how to rely on yourself, and how to pay for that nice, big, expensive home that you decided you wanted, when really you could have bought a less expensive one. So the subsidy is not really helping you anymore, because it's forcing the government to pay for something, and forcing the person making the person feel as though they have some guy behind them to help them out and basically fix all their mistakes for them, which is nice. The government does do this. They keep exploitative loans from going into place. A properly regulated market won't have too many problems like this. But still, people have to learn how to make their own calculations for themselves. Additionally, I'd like to look at some of the arguments made by the Prime Minister of the government, one of which is the idea of the American dream. I think the American dream is more based on self-reliance than on owning a bigger home and owning your own car. I think the American dream, and this is of course my own interpretation, is much more based on the fact that you can do anything if you try hard enough. And while the government might help you here by helping, what is this?
I'm getting a call.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, I hit busy. I didn't hit the start button on the timer somehow. Like I thought I hit it, but
oh no.
I'm sorry.
Let me know. I can see how much time has left.
Because that was silly of me.
You've got. Let me see this. You got 2.5 minutes left.
Oh wow. Okay.
I can get it on my watch.
The other fact that the Prime Minister, that the government brought up, was the fact that that in these cheaper homes that people would be forced to pay for in the event of having no government subsidy, they have a lower quality of life, they are poorer, they have poorer families, they live in worse communities. The fact is that, no, it's busy.
People still calling?
Yeah, this guy phoned you again. Anyway,
Sorry.
that
Very popular.
people, I just completely lost my train
I'd
of
like to
thought.
note this is the opposition's phone.
I'm getting Jonathan to call.
Anyway, so the government mentioned this fact that in these lower quality homes, people had a lower quality of life. Well, that's pretty obvious. But correlation, if I may say, is not causation, or does not necessarily imply causation. These people live in poor quality homes because they don't have money. They're not poor because they live in poor quality homes. I think that's a pretty salient point to make. And additionally, their community is probably not particularly good because they don't have any money. If anything, you should be arguing that they should be, that the government should be paying to. Is that the timer? Oh,
Was it time?
I don't know. It says timer.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time I have for the moment.